Okay, our final piece of the nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. So remember, the autonomic nervous system, this is the involuntary nervous system that is basically maintaining homeostasis. And it's divided into two subsystems: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And these are the same type of nerve. All the nerves and neurons that we've been talking about, they're the same. The controls for this come from like the hypothalamus, adrenal gland, medulla oblongata, places like that. I mean, I guess the hypothalamus will be the main one, pituitary gland. And these two systems are running concurrently and are balancing each other out. So let's look. Do we have some nice anatomy of these? Here we go. There's some anatomy. So they originate from the CNS. And you've got the parasympathetic. Basically, it originates from the bottom of the spinal column and from the top of the spinal column. The sympathetic, they're sort of throughout this. So this is the sympathetic, is through the center. The nerves originate throughout, and these nerves are gonna be like motor neurons, and they're the same type of motor neuron. The difference is, so you'll have an action potential travel down the nerve, and then when it gets to the end, remember when it gets to the end to the axon, we talked about this last time, is you have this synaptic transmission. And then down here, though, you've got the organ that is being, or the gland that is being affected by the parasympathetic system. And the difference between the two systems is here. So yeah, the nerves run from different places, but also is the vesicles and the neurotransmitter that they contain. So remember, there are neurotransmitters that inhibit things and neurotransmitter that promote things, excite things. And basically, it's not a property of the neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitter is just the neurotransmitter. It's a key. It's the property of the receptor and then what the receptor does. So in those organs, you have receptors for the neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic system and receptors for the neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system. And so depending on which neurotransmitter is in the synaptic cleft, or what the ratio of those neurotransmitters is, will determine what that organ or that muscle or that gland is doing and how much of it it's doing. So let's talk about those transmitters, the neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitters are, from the sympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter is called noradrenaline. And you might have heard of adrenaline and so this is a relative of adrenaline. It looks very similar to adrenaline. Adrenaline circulates through your blood. This is just in those synapses. And what happens is, so when your sympathetic nervous system is stimulated for whatever reason, so the sympathetic nervous system is associated with, for example, with fight or flight, but it's not. Some people think, oh, it's excluded. There's only fight or flight. No, it's running all the time. It's just in degrees. Though when it's super stimulated, like bear, then that whole system fires and it overwhelms the parasympathetic nervous system. The balance gets shifted really all towards one way, and all this huge cascade of stuff happens that is associated with the sympathetic nervous system and is a fight or flight response. But those systems are always in check, in balance, running together. And it's just the degree, you're kind of binary this way, of how much one is neurotransmitter one is producing, how much the other one is. And so what happens is, so let's just take, for example, let's Let's take an example. Okay, how about the digestive system? So you eat a large meal, okay? You eat a huge spaghetti dinner. I have an inkling for spaghetti. You eat a big spaghetti dinner. So your, the hypothalamus will, those reflex control centers of the brain start sending signal along these nerves. And what happens is they release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. And, the nerves that target your digestive system. And for the digestive system, what acetylcholine does is, so there are receptors along the digestive system, it will stimulate producing saliva. Those glands, salivary glands. The muscles around the stomach to start those muscles, the stomach moving around, churning the food. Things like producing gastric juice. Those will be all things that are stimulated by the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. But now, so you're digesting your big meal here, but now you remember that tomorrow, what's going on? It's like the image is waving. I don't know what's going on. That tomorrow you forgot that Mr. K assigned, there's going to be a quiz on this tomorrow. And so you freak out. You're like, oh no, you get really stressed. And that starts to simulate your sympathetic nervous system now. And so the nerves from the sympathetic nervous system, which are connected to your digestive tract, where they end up in the digestive tract, start releasing into the synapses. And they're going to be like, they could be like next door to each other into this area. They start releasing noradrenaline. And noradrenaline for the digestive tract inhibits the function of the digestive tract. So even though, you might still have acetylcholine, but now you're producing more noradrenaline, so you're slowing down your digestive system, and, you just get bloating and stuff. When you're nervous, when you get nervous and stressed out, you don't digest food well, you get like gas, you get gassy and stuff like that. Well, that's thanks to that parasympathetic or the sympathetic nervous system inhibiting the glands and all of the things, the structures associated with the digestive tract, so slowing it down. I'm sorry, I have to assign tests, so I know that I'm sorry that I'm doing that. At the same time, it may be the sympathetic nervous system. So those receptors, when they receive the receptors in the digestive tract are telling the digestive tract to be inhibited, but at the same time, noradrenaline, the receptors that are around the heart or control the heart are telling the heart to speed up. It's being excited. So it's not a function of the neurotransmitter. It's just how the neurotransmitter is interpreted by the receptors of the cells that are being targeted. Again, remember, drugs can trick your body and become the neurotransmitters. So you can have drugs that stimulate your digestive system. So, for example, well, let's talk about like THC. You get the munchies, you get hungry because THC. In some way, I don't know I actually don't know the details of it, but is a drug that relaxes you, and the parasympathetic nervous system is associated with a vegetative state. What that's called, is like a calmed state. So it is, targeting things and stimulating the activity of the digestive system, constricting your blood vessels, things like that. I don't know exactly how THC works, but then then you have drugs uh like crank. This is like those things. What is that? Meth. Oh, those like horrible things. And what they do is they stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. So instead of putting you in a vegetative state, it's the other thing. You sweat, your digestive system shuts down. You don't eat food. You don't digest. You're not hungry. Your heartbeat increases. Your pupils dilate. You feel, I guess, it also, where it targets, it makes you feel good and stuff. And you don't sleep. And what it does is basically it's like a synthetic form of acetylcholine, noradrenaline. I hope I haven't been messing them up. Parasympathetic nervous system is acetylcholine, and sympathetic system is noradrenaline. So I'm sorry if I've mixed them up. Correct me. Go rewind in the video and be like, he's saying it the wrong thing. So noradrenaline, it basically stimulates and it wrecks these. It'll and again, I'm not sure if it's I don't know exactly how it works, because it can do two things. It can block the enzyme that destroys the neurotransmitter, so that the neurotransmitters are stuck in the receptors. So the receptors are constantly sending the signal. Okay, so you're going to be awake, your pupils are dilated, you're excited, you're in this excited state constantly, and that enzyme that comes along to remove that neurotransmitter is not coming along. Or again, I think when it comes to methamphetamines, though, they actually like bind really hardcore with these receptors and wreck them to a certain degree. So they damage over time. You have damage to these receptors. Your body also is like, well, if there's already a neurotransmitter, I'm not going to make more neurotransmitter. These vesicles can break down. All kinds of horrible stuff, and you ruin the balance of these two systems. And what these two systems, right, are doing are trying to maintain homeostasis. So with drugs, you're pushing one way or the other. You're ruining that homeostasis. The enzymes that destroy the transmitters, so noradrenaline, the sympathetic nervous system, so fight or flight. The excited one is monoamine oxidase and acetylcholinesterase. I just really like that name. Acetylcholinesterase is the one for the parasympathetic nervous system. So drugs will interfere with acetylcholinesterase. Drugs are more complicated than that, but on a basic level, this is what they're doing. Or they'll inhibit or promote. That's the other thing. So drugs can do is like inhibit the release of these neurotransmitters. I mean, they can work in lots of different ways or pretend to be the neurotransmitters. One thing to note, because drugs are effective when it comes to the parasympathetic, or the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the autonomic nervous system is in the somatic nervous system, so the one that we control, from the spinal cord to where the signal ends is one neuron, is these huge cells. There's no synapse. It doesn't like pass on to another one. It just goes all the way. Like the motor neurons, there's one motor neuron. There's lots of motor neurons bundled together, but the length of motor neurons. For the autonomic nervous system, there is something called the two motor neuron effect, and so there are these things called ganglia. And basically, what that is so from the that part in the spinal cord here. So here we go. It doesn't go, it's not one motor neuron that heads, here for the urinary system to relax the bladder. So if you're in fight or flight, you're going to pee yourself. There's not one, it has to stop at a ganglia. There's a synapse there, and then continue on with another. It's two motor neurons. And so this is where drugs can work in those ganglia, because, the drugs can be in the parasympathetic. Your central nervous system is very protected, is a lot more protected than those ganglia out there, which have a synapse in them, and a synapse is that space between two nerves. Briefly, I guess, let's talk about fight or flight. So fight or flight is you have a stimulus, your brain determines that you are in danger, or like stress, you can have constant, like that's why stress is bad, because you can have this constant stress on firing the sympathetic nervous system. So and all of the effects. Look at the effect of it. So pupils dilate, increased heart rate, so increased blood pressure. All of these things. Those will be airways dilates the bronchioles. So your bronchioles are open. You are pulling in more air, but you also can pull in more pathogens that way. You're sweating more because you want to cool, the body's getting ready to cool down, because if you're going to be running from a bear, you're going to get hot. So you are starting to sweat in anticipation of getting hot. The increase of rate of glycogen to glucose. So those are, remember those, we did in the pancreas, there's those like insulin and glucagon. So what you'll be releasing more insulin, which is promoting, hopefully that I'm saying the right one, is that it is promoting the conversion of glycogen into glucose, because your cells, you're going to be fighting a bear, you're going to need, your muscles are going to need as much energy, as much sugar as possible. Your adrenaline also stimulates your nerves, gets all that stuff going. Your vagina is going to contract. You don't need your vagina to fight a bear. Your digestive system activity is inhibited, so that noradrenaline is inhibiting here the digestive system, because you don't have time. You don't want to be wasting you don't want to be spending energy digesting food. It takes too long to pull those nutrients out, to get energy out of them. So you're going to shut down your digestive system, and because to fight a bear, you're not going to need to be digesting things to fight a bear. And people who are in constant stress, so the state of stress, you're stressing about your marks, you're stressing about your job, you're stressing about what university you're going to go to, you are stimulating their sympathetic nervous system, and so all of these things are happening. And, for example, for your digestive system, the decreased activity in your digestive system, so you're secreting less mucus in your stomach. And remember, the mucus is the thing that protects the lining of your stomach. It can lead to ulcers, heartburn, things like that. That's why people get that stuff. What else? Again, high blood pressure and stuff. That's part of the sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is you're trying to go to sleep, and you digest really well when you're sleeping. It helps you go to sleep. Uterus relaxes. You make more pee. That's why when you're sleeping, you wake up in the morning and you have to pee. Okay. I think that covers that pretty well.